One of Joe Biden's closest personal advisors and the smartest guy he knows is doing interviews, and I say by all means, let him speak. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the show on YouTube at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. It's Liberal Tuesday, and it starts right now.
Like all these Democrats say, you have to talk about and realize that people are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you got food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes? Who do you think does garden? Who do you think is here by the sheer just grit and will that they figured out a way to get here because they thought that they could give themselves and their family a better chance? I agree with Quentin Tarantino. George Clooney is not a actor. He is a I don't know what he is. He's a brand. You, what do you have to do with anything? Why do I have to listen to you? The only difference between crack cocaine and cocaine is sodium bicarbonate and water and heat. Literally,
that's it.
That's it.
And those things are pretty much free if you go to like a science store.
This is free. You can go to your neighborhood convenience store. If I became president in 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 3 years from now, I would pick up the phone and call President El Salvador and say, you either send them back or I'm invade. It's a crime what they're doing. He's a dictator thug.
Bukele or Trump?
Both.
Well, folks, I'm glad Hunter is off the drugs. You know, I think it's our duty to let one of Joe's closest personal advisors just keep talking and talking. I mean, this stuff is great. New face of the Democrat Party, perhaps? Look, some Democrats are going to say that Hunter Biden doesn't represent his father or the party, and that may well be true. But when you lay it all out there and the things he said in those unhinged rants, even down to the multiple F-bombs, well, he kind of is a representation of where the party is right now. They see illegal aliens as permanent and generational serf class labor. They think dropping F-bombs, every other word, makes them authentic and badass. And they are absolutely 100% out of their minds. They are Hunter. Hunter is them. So good luck with that, y'all. Joining me now on this coveted Liberal Tuesday is our friend and attorney, Ethan Bearman, who may or may not still consider himself a liberal Democrat. He's definitely more sane than Hunter Biden. But let's find out his take. I want to start with Hunter Biden. That was a 3-hour interview. Now, I give him credit for doing a 3-hour interview because I don't think Joe or Kamala have ever done a 3-hour interview. But, you know, when you take out all the F-bombs and you get to the substance of it, do you think he's making any valid points there?
Oh, wow. I mean, this was quite the bombshell, these interviews, Tommy. So you're absolutely right about that. And I just want to thank you for having me back on. It's always great to talk with you. But Hunter Biden, what's fascinating to me is the endless focus of the right on Hunter. First of all, I understand it. Look, this goes back to Jimmy Carter days, to Richard Nixon days, that we love to focus on the children and the close relatives of presidents and now former presidents. But Hunter Biden said some things. I don't necessarily agree with him about George Clooney. I love George Clooney as an actor. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou is like one of the greatest Coen Brothers films, still one of my favorites of all time. And George Clooney was a key part of that. But when it comes to some of the attacks that Hunter Biden made on the Democratic establishment, of which I also look at the Republican establishment and see some of the same, which is why before I ever became a Democrat, I was a no party preference. And I'm probably this close, Tommy. I'm not ready to make any announcements at this time about leaving the Democratic Party, but I am a nanometer away at this point. But Hunter's right. You have grift, you have graft, you have people that just absolutely take advantage of their positions to enrich themselves. I mean, he went after everybody from David Axelrod to the crooked media, the podcasters there. And I mean, he let loose on everybody, which has been one of my big complaints about the two-party system in general. So, I mean, look, Hunter's got a lot to say. He's seen it from the inside. So I think that there's a lot of value in listening to what he says. And Tommy, I have to say, he doesn't represent the Democratic Party itself.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that some of his criticisms aren't valid. He's one of the only people, to my knowledge, that's actually come out and explicitly named all those people and said, all these people behind the scenes are full of crap. So, he's on to something there. He's making an assessment of the Democrat Party and the old guard of it that's probably fairly accurate. I think it's interesting to say, though, that some of these people are grifters when I think Hunter Biden might be the ultimate grifter. I mean, even if you take out all the family business dealings and the Burisma of it all, the paintings, the money he made on those, and now he can't sell them. I mean, there's a lot there. But I just think it's interesting that he's coming out of the woodwork and doing these interviews. I hope he continues. I think new face of the Democrat movement right there. And the F-bombs, the Democrats are trying that out now. They're dropping the F-bombs. They think that that's going to appeal to the young people. I'm not so sure about that. There's plenty to talk about today. I want to go to this next thing, though, because I know that you're always authentic and honest with me about it. This information that we're uncovering through DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and others about the Russiagate hoax and Barack Obama's involvement in it, and some of the memos that were withheld, and the way that this all went down, does that give you a cause for pause at all? Because it seems pretty egregious.
Yeah, look, Tommy, as you said, I'll always give it to you straight. And it is concerning. I'm disappointed to see that there is some of this information that allegedly exists. I guess I haven't really read anything that's been released by DNI Gabbard at this point. And at the same time, I'm cautious with this new information because remember, it was a grand jury in Washington, D.C. in 2018 that issued the subpoena, the summons out of the investigation. This is back during Trump's first term to go after these Russians. There was, I believe, at least 10 specifically that were named in that indictment by the FBI. And that was Trump's DOJ in the first term that released the Mueller report, which did have damning information. And it was the Senate Select Committee that released a really damning report. That also doesn't mean that there isn't other bad information out there. So I'm open to listening to it. I want to see the information. I wouldn't be surprised that Democrats played games with it as well. Look, politics is a blood sport, as we both know. It is absolutely brutal. But I hate to see any law broken. I will always want to see, Tommy, people, whomever it is, breaking the law to be brought to justice.
Even
so if
Barack
somebody
Obama?
was breaking, well, look, the Supreme Court just issued that ruling last summer that you can't criminally charge a president who's, they're for actions they took in office, as long as it was within the context of their duties. National security is clearly a core part of presidential duties.
Yeah. And I understand that, but when you get a memo in December 2016 that says that they didn't find anything that Russia influenced the election or that Trump was colluding with Russia, and you bury it and you continue this BS anyway, that doesn't look good. And then we're also getting new information about, again, nobody likes to go back to the emails, but we're getting information that, they had more evidence about Hillary Clinton's emails, and perhaps the FBI just wasn't interested in that. And I think that that's rather interesting because they were very interested in going after Donald Trump on anything and everything. I mean, there's a mugshot that exists of our former, now current president. So there never seems to be any bounds that the left abides by when it comes to going after President Trump. But it seems like everybody else, it's like you say, perhaps Barack Obama is implicated in this directly, and perhaps he deserves to be prosecuted. And everybody go, oh, no, not Obama. But they're totally fine watching President Trump do the perp walk. Do you think that's a little interesting?
Well, I don't yet, because what it is we don't have the sufficient evidence to bring forth something against President Obama. Should there be sufficient evidence, as opposed to just, here's one memo, you and I both know the parties love to attack each other. Like I said, it's a blood sport. So here, a single memo doesn't necessarily prove anything dispositive regarding what was done, because there were lots of memos at that time. So if there's a single memo that said something else, I don't necessarily take that as proof positive that something wrong was done. I think the concern here, when you start going back to the emails, is you really open the door to things that the right doesn't want to talk about. I mean, you and I both know one of our former friends from Fox News who has committed something in my mind that's extraordinarily egregious while he's been serving the president in the second term. So I just think that there are things that are valid and things that are just politics. And I want us to stay focused on our great issues that face us. And that is China. That is things like the Islamo-fascists. And I think some of our internecine warfare here within the United States only serves our enemies and doesn't necessarily serve us.
I don't like investigation fatigue either. And quite frankly, unless I'm going to see somebody in handcuffs, a lot of it is a lot of smoke and it's a lot of just talk. And I felt that way with the Biden investigation into the influence peddling. Not that I didn't believe it, but because it just seems like they investigate. And unless it's President Trump, nobody ever gets arrested for anything. So I get you on that point. However, I think that underlying here, it's, do we have a weaponized Justice Department? Do we have a weaponized FBI, CIA, intelligence agencies? That, I think, that institutional rot that's been there for maybe decades, that's what some folks are concerned about. It's like you turn the other cheek quite explicitly when it comes to Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, but then you're very honed in on President Trump. And it just seems rather interesting that it always seems to go that way.
I just want to share something, though. You know, when I very first met you at a different network a long time ago, I, at that time, was eviscerating then Secretary Clinton over the email issue, because to me, that is severely problematic. I think that what she did was completely wrong. And so I'm equal. I will call people out on both sides. I look out for what is best in my mind for the United States, for our country. You know, I wear red, white, and blue and celebrate the United States. We're from the Midwest. It's very important to me. And I'll call people out regardless of which side of the aisle they're on.
Well, and I always appreciate that about you. So I'm going to give you a chance to call out some folks in California that I believe deserve a lot of that. This is the same issue to who I consider bonehead leaders. You've got Governor Gavin Newsom, and then you've got Mayor Karen Bass. They're both talking about immigration. Who do you want to discuss first? Do you want to do Gavin or do you want to do Karen?
Oh, my gosh. Well, you know that I used to be a severe critic of Governor Newsom. And in recent years, I see him as having grown, and I see him as a really strong potential candidate for 2028 for the Democratic Party. So I'd love to talk about Governor Newsom first.
Oh, boy. Well, you know what? Guess what? So would I. So he's really active on Twitter, now X, very active. And he does multiple podcasts. I don't know when he has a chance to run, you know, the great state of California, because he's just on Twitter. I mean, he tweets far more than I do. It's interesting. He's got so much time on his hands. But in here, he's talking about the National Guard coming to LA. Oh, you know, he keeps tweeting about it. Oh, why do you have them here? It's a waste of their time. They're bored and you should have never called them here. And, you know, now they're leaving because there doesn't seem to be a threat currently to the city and to government buildings there because the riots have subsided. I'm sure a new one will kick up, you know, any day. But what I found interesting, and I replied to his tweet, by the way, because I just can't help myself, but I don't understand why, when you're talking about you shouldn't have sent the National Guard, completely ignoring the fact that the National Guard was sent because he couldn't police the people in his own state, and Karen Bass couldn't police the people in her own city to keep them from burning things, destroying things, vandalizing things, and attacking agents. That's why the National Guard was there. And I know that they have gone out of their way to say it was mostly peaceful, but the images don't really align with that mostly peaceful narrative. So what's your take on all of it?
I love that you brought this up, Tommy, because I strongly dislike the anarchist far left. You know, the horseshoe theory really does come around. I have no place for people who attack law enforcement, destroy property. I have never supported that. And I think it's completely wrong. But at the same time, I was downtown at the federal courthouse. One of these signs, you know, one of these plaques behind me is for the Central District here in California for federal court. So I observed, a fair amount of what was going on in that area. It really was a very small area of downtown by the freeway, which I despise that they closed the freeway. We have bad enough traffic as it is. But truly, Tommy, 99% of the protests were completely peaceful, absolutely under our First Amendment rights to protest in the United States. And it's this fringe. By the way, I was at the George Floyd protests over there by Third and Fairfax. I was live streaming that on Twitter. And you can see 99% of the people were absolutely peaceful. Were there to share their voice, which is completely a great American tradition.
Ethan, was that when COVID took a break? Was that when COVID took a break for justice?
Yes,
I just
and of
want
course
to remember.
I was wearing.
Yes, yeah.
I was protecting myself, but yes, I totally understand what you're saying on that one. But my point is this. It appears to me, this is my observation, that there is a professional set of agitators that are coming into these protests that clearly are funded, are organized, and are creating the violence, like when they burned the police car at Fairfax and Third. And I believe I saw at least similar tactics employed that you saw in downtown LA. So do I think Governor Newsom was right to say, look, this is overkill with the National Guard? It probably was. It definitely was in my mind when it comes to the Marines. And I still think that there's a valid argument there regarding the Posse Comitatus Act and whether that's even legal to deploy the Marines in that case. The National Guard, that is a president's prerogative. I don't agree with it necessarily, but it's a real argument there to be had because there was destruction of property going on.
Yeah, and they had to call a curfew. That was Karen Bass that called the curfew. That wasn't President Trump. So this whole thing of it's not that bad, everyone's mostly peaceful, there's just a few people acting out. Well, you don't have to call a curfew in a radius of downtown if it's mostly peaceful. And I think President Trump watched what happened in 2020 when COVID took a break for George Floyd. And he said, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to burn cities anymore. We're not going to have autonomous zones of lawlessness anymore. We're not going to have, our officers being attacked with bottles and rocks and Molotov cocktails. We're not going to do that anymore. So I think the presence was more of a, hey, just so you know, even if it is a smaller group of agitators, it will not be tolerated. And if Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, if they weren't going to ensure the safety of people in Los Angeles, our president is going to. And I think they should be saying thank you. And so should the people of California. But go ahead.
I think that was done. So the one part that I have the problem with, Tommy, is that it really appeared to be done the way that the law enforcement moved in, and the National Guard in particular, and the ICE raids that were happening in LA that continue to, I see them around LA fairly regularly. But it was done in a way as a show of force. And I think that instigated the type of protests that we saw. I absolutely do not defend destruction of property or attacks on our law enforcement. But I believe it was done in a way to rile those protests up. And I believe there is some blame to instigate it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, though, to say that these people that already had it in their mind that they're going to go light Waymos on fire, that somehow seeing the National Guard there was like, you know what, I was just going to light one car on fire, but now I'm going to light two. I think that's an interesting argument. Yeah.
Why Waymos? I mean, that was so ridiculous to me to light the Waymos on fire. I hated that.
Again, I don't know if they're the most intelligent group of people. I think that there's also an element of those individuals that they just want to go crazy and they just want to destroy things, and they'll use any excuse to do it, whether it's George Floyd or Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It doesn't matter to them. Let's talk about immigration, though. So, I'm a big proponent of enforcing immigration law, probably one of my top things, I would say. And Mayor Karen Bass, I don't think she's an attorney like you. She could use some brushing up on a few different things, but here she is on Face the Nation talking about the unconstitutional nature of enforcing immigration law. Let's take a listen.
Tom Homan has said physical description cannot be the sole factor for reasonable suspicion, but things like location, occupation, physical appearance add up, particularly if a person runs away or if there's a tattoo or something. You don't seem to believe that.
Location, sitting at Well, location, sitting at a bus stop, walking down the street, selling fruit. No, I do dispute that. Absolutely. And, you know, again, the National Guard should have never been deployed in the first place. We did not ask for them. This is the federal seizure of power from a governor deploying the National Guard when the National Guard were not even needed.
So, again, I want to talk about that point, though. So the whole point that she's trying to make, and Alex Padilla has been trying to make all over, again, a lot of time that they spend on X. But the whole point is, well, you can't go into these areas that are predominantly Latino because that's racially profiling people. Well, you know, Ethan, you and I both know that there are going to be areas where they know that there are illegal aliens where they are, where they work, where they're being employed. The weed farm was one of them. So this whole thing of you're just going after people that look Latino. Well, listen, if you're not an illegal alien and you happen to be Latino, or you happen to, you know, have features that might look like a Latino, you don't have anything to worry about. To me, it's no different than when I'm at the airport and they put the drug dog everywhere. And it's like, well, I'm not carrying drugs, so I'm not worried about it. You know, I just don't understand the uproar over this.
Yeah, well, I think that there are a couple of different issues there. One in particular is that U.S. citizens have been detained in these ICE raids and have been held for a period of time. And I don't think that that's okay, that any U.S. citizen should ever be swept up. The other one is that we actually have laws against racial profiling. So if it is racial profiling, that's problematic. And the other aspect that I don't think I saw in that clip with Mayor Bass is something I've talked about actually for a very long time. Maybe my first ever primetime appearance on Fox News, I think I talked about this. And it's the idea that the federal government cannot make state and local governments do the federal government's job. And this came out of a Second Amendment case in 1997 called Prince v. United States, meaning the federal government cannot commandeer local law enforcement to do the federal government's job. And immigration enforcement is the federal government's job. So one of the things that has been argued pretty extensively here is that you can't tell us to do your job to enforce immigration. And that's been a key source of conflict, is the idea, you know, red states, of course, happily cooperate. Texas is all aboard, you know, all on board with that. But that's not the government's right to tell the local law enforcement or the local states to participate in any way in what they're doing. They can't force California to do that. And that's why they do have to do things like bring in the National Guard.
So here's my question, though. I understand your point that, you know, local PD, they're not immigration officers. But what Tom Homan has said multiple times is, we're not asking you to be immigration officers. We're saying if you've got somebody in your jail who is an illegal alien, who is a public safety threat, let us know, and then we will come to the jail and we will detain and arrest that individual instead of having to go out into the communities. And he said this over and over again. The reason that we have to flood the zone in these sanctuary cities is because you won't work with us. So now we have to go to the fruit stands and we have to go to the weed farms and we have to go out into the community to arrest and detain these public safety threats that have ICE detainers and what else, because you won't work with us in the safety of a jail. So everybody is being put at risk by these sanctuary city policies. Wouldn't you rather have the ICE agents go into the jail and have a smooth handover of a criminal illegal alien rather than having them out in MacArthur Park?
Yeah, MacArthur Park. That is the perfect example of where we have just failed time and time again in this state to take care of a situation that's a nightmare, and it's disappointing to see. But one thing that we have talked about before is I have always 100% agreed that if somebody comes to this country and they commit crimes, they don't belong here. We absolutely need to get rid of them. They should not be in the United States, right? So the idea that we have repeat offenders or people, to your point, that are in jail, that is something that needs to be addressed. And the Democrats in particular really need to look in the mirror and go, why are you protecting people who are in jail? What is with this? They've been arrested. They don't belong here. Or if you're even here on an immigration visa of certain types, there's due process afforded to that. But we need to get them back out of the country. You can't come here and commit crimes. The issue is that it appears that ICE has not been focused on the criminal element of people who don't belong here, is that they've been going after people who are working on a farm, so in the agricultural sector, the hospitality sector.
You mean the weed
with,
farm where they had the illegal immigrant child labor?
Yeah, I mean, so child labor is a whole separate issue. Now, who hired him though? But so now you need to be analyzing and going after who hired the kids. Because if that's an American citizen, they should be arrested too, not deported, of course, but they're violating labor laws. We fought hard to have child labor laws put in place.
Yeah, I agree with you. But again, Tom Homan has said, if I'm going to arrest a public safety threat, and I'm having to do that in the community, and there's 10 other people there who are also illegal aliens and don't belong in this country, guess what? They're going to get swept up too. We're not going to turn a blind eye to you because you haven't committed a crime on record yet. I want to move on to something else that I think is very disturbing and I'm really concerned about. And I'm hoping that someone beyond Breitbart will really dig into this. I know there's been some local news investigations, which I'm happy to hear. But this California fire aid money, this concert that raised millions of dollars, there's a lot of reporting out there to suggest that this money is not going to fire victims. And instead, it's going to these nonprofits. And these nonprofits, some of them haven't been able to really tell us with full transparency if that money has gone to the right people. I saw today Breitbart did a deep dive. There's money that went to California Native Vote Project, or California Native Vote, which is a nonprofit that's focused on getting political participation within the Native American community, which I'm not sure how that's necessarily related to fire relief and fire victims. But this is really concerning here.
I could not agree with you more, Tommy. The fires here have been were absolutely devastating. I personally know people who lost, everything. They lost generations of heirlooms. They, things that are absolutely irreplaceable. And I'm not even going to get into all the issues with how the fire went down and all of that. I completely agree that there must be an investigation, and I sure hope that the U.S. attorney here in LA, the new attorney, does a full investigation into what happened to money that has been donated to help the victims of these horrific fires in Altadena, in Pacific Palisades. This has been very, very harmful to our community here in Los Angeles, across demographics, across income levels. It didn't pick and choose. Fire is indiscriminate on who it harmed and killed in some cases. So for a fundraiser like that to happen and the money to apparently not go to the actual victims. Look, I absolutely support Indigenous people, Native Americans, understanding how to register and vote, really important. But that has nothing to do with the fires. And you're absolutely right on that. And I have no place for people who, under the guise of charity, will raise what is reported as $100 million, and none of that money is allegedly being spent on the actual fire victims. Hold them all accountable, throw them all in jail to the maximum extent under the law, and publicly name and shame. I'm all for public name and shame in these situations.
And to be fair, these nonprofits, they always have an excuse, like this California Native Project, Vote Project. They say, well, we're using the money to help the Native American community that are fire victims. And that sounds great and all. But I want to know where the money is actually gone, because you can put a great spin on a lot of these things. Now, there has been some reports that some of this money went to like Pasadena Humane Society. That's fantastic. I personally donated to them. But there's a lot of it that I believe is unaccounted for. And this feels like a similar song and dance with California. The $20 billion on homelessness, where did that go? And I'm not saying it's just a California problem. I think anytime you have nonprofits or you have government contractors, what have you, there seems to be accounting issues. But it feels like a lot of the issues do happen in California.
Can I just actually join you on that one for a minute, Tommy? A number of years ago, when I was on the radio in San Francisco, I was very frustrated with the homeless situation, and I took a nonprofit's financial statement live on the air. I have a business background. I understand accounting, all that great stuff. I went through their financial statement, and it was something like 90% of the money that was given just to this one agency, not a government agency, a non-governmental agency, right, that gets the grants to help with homeless people. Something like 90% of the money didn't go to help homeless people. And it absolutely enrages me because there is a genuine homeless problem. The majority of Californians vote for things like these taxes to help the homeless, and the money doesn't get spent properly. We had that under Mayor Garcetti. We just saw that with the homeless agency here in LA that predates Mayor Bass, but includes Mayor Bass, that they can't account for essentially billions of dollars. That absolutely must stop, must be investigated, and these people must be brought to justice.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of these nonprofits and NGOs, the people that are running them have real fat salaries. And, I don't know if people would donate if they thought that their money went to the fat salary of somebody who is consulting or facilitating, and then we don't really know what good they're doing. I think they should have to account for all of that. I want to bring up one more thing on this point, because I don't know if you're familiar at all. I'm a millennial, so I loved The Hills when it was on. Spencer Pratt, Heidi Montag, they're a millennial superpower couple in my era of watching The Hills. But Spencer Pratt has been going to town on Mayor Bass, Gavin Newsom, Los Angeles, saying he was a fire victim. And he's calling out a lot of this. And they've called him a C-list reality star, a conspiracy theorist, because he's been pointing out some of the things that have not been adding up, not just where the money's gone, but also this, I guess, restructuring, if you will, in the Palisades and areas affected by fire. And they call it a conspiracy theory, but maybe you know a little bit more about it. Kind of rezoning these areas for affordable housing. That's the conspiracy theory, that perhaps they're trying to change this area in the Palisades and elsewhere that is, very expensive housing that burned down, and try to change it into affordable housing or something of that nature. He's been calling it out, and they've been telling him to basically shut up.
You're going to find this entertaining, Tommy. I actually follow Spencer Pratt on social media because, look, whether or not I think he is exaggerating, I think in some aspect of it regarding, they're just going to build 9,000 new units of low-income housing. I didn't find any facts to support that. However, the way State Senator Ben Allen here in my area tacked this on. It really has to do with how messed up the way the California legislature operates. Because it was late in the session, he tacked on a bunch of language to an unrelated portion of a bill to try and get some of this relief through. That doesn't mean that it's all pure and clean to me either. But that was added on to help the fire victims in a way that seems to appear, by the way, that it could allow for this rezoning, and it could allow for low-income housing to be put in areas where people had their magnificent homes that were destroyed. And I think that both sides have aspects of it that they're absolutely right about, and other sides that are exaggerated. The left is saying, oh no, we aren't going to do any of this. The way it was written, it could be done. And I don't think that there's 9,000 units already identified that are going to be built there. I just haven't seen those facts. I'm concerned, though, Tommy, that it is to what you're saying, and this is why I absolutely distance myself from the progressive left here in California, is that they are, and the track record supports that they would try and do something like that. So even if it's a conspiracy, it's not a completely baseless one, because we've seen that happen. And so why would you take these people's property away and make it difficult for them to rebuild? And then, there's a reason to be suspicious.
And if you go down a little bit further in this, what people are skeptical and suspicious of is that you're going to have affordable housing in these areas where people can't rebuild their homes. They're not getting the permits, and of course the insurance is going to be astronomical. So that's one concern. That's one bucket there. But also, I think there's some concern to our previous conversation that perhaps there would be politicians who might have a stake in having affordable housing being built because perhaps they've got contractors or developers that might happen to support their campaigns or otherwise support their endeavors that maybe are looking to make money off of affordable housing developments in the Palisades or elsewhere that's been impacted by the fires. So it feels icky and it feels sticky. And you're right, they can call it a conspiracy theory all day long, but it's not baseless. And I'm wondering if you think that we're ever going to get answers on it, or are we just going to have to wait for them to build the affordable housing units and say, I told you so?
So this is the problem where I actually lean your way on this one, Tommy. And I have to say that because since the day I started getting involved in local politics back in Santa Cruz in 2010, 2011, it's become very apparent to me that California has a serious problem with whether it's corruption. I've seen it in red state. I've lived all over the country. You know that. But I've seen it everywhere. But it seems especially bad in California that there is a lot of backdoor dealing, that there is other types of, somebody knows somebody and there's some payback somewhere. I am so against that in every case. And I just have to say, this is an area, though, where I also disagree with the conservatives because I am totally against, personally, I'm not saying judicially, but personally, I think Citizens United has been deeply damaging to our country. I want sunshine on everything. I don't want people to spend money in secret ways when it comes to politics. I want to know everything that's going on. So people can't be doing these deals that appear to be really bad for the tax-paying public.
And the fire victims.
And the fire victims in this case. Absolutely.
But you got Spencer Pratt out there, kind of one of the lone people. The other celebrities, they were real mad when it happened, but I haven't seen them be as forthright. Maybe the A-listers, they're not as loud. Interesting. The last thing I do have to ask you about, and I want to try to do it as quick as we can, even though there's a lot to dig in here because I've already kept you so long. But I got to get your take on Zoran Mamdani in New York City, the mayoral candidate, because, the second I saw him, I thought this is going to push Ethan over to the conservative side. The fact that you've got a leading frontrunner for New York City's mayoral race who will not condemn globalize the Intifada, among many other very, very concerning things that he has said, advocated for, or refused to condemn. What's your take on America's largest city and what they're about to perhaps do?
I am not going to go full Hunter Biden with you here, so I won't be dropping the F-bombs. It is beyond deeply concerning to me that it's not just that he won't condemn globalize the Intifada. In my mind, it just appears to me that his track record is very clear that he has no interest in Jewish people, unless they're capos who are just going to take his side. And the state of Israel, there's no other nation on earth that people question its legitimacy. Only the one tiny Jewish country. What's worse about Mamdani that I think we need to be talking about, and then we need to look to Minneapolis too, Tommy, because the Democratic Party is doing it to Jacob Fry, the incumbent Democratic mayor of Minneapolis. They've chosen a DSA candidate again to get behind, which is sick to me. Communism fails. Communism has failed. Ask anybody who grew up under communism or true socialism, they will tell you it is anti-human. It is bad for humans. It is bad for anybody who dissents. It is an absolute tragedy that we have people in the United States that are so deluded to think that communism, government-owned grocery stores in New York City. Go look at the film of Boris Yeltsin coming to the United States and coming to a grocery store for the first time. Because anybody who was ever in Soviet Russia or any of the Soviet republics can tell you that you had one item on the shelf and it was probably, of bread to choose from, and it probably had weevils in it. We do not need to go there. We don't want to go there. It is deeply harmful. For as flawed as capitalism is, it is still the right approach to ensuring that people have access to food, that have access to choices. The United States is still, to this day, where all the faults that we have, we are still, in my mind, the greatest country on earth. This is the land of opportunity for all of the warts and bruises that we have. This is still the place. So to go towards socialism and communism is beyond abhorrent. And when you start seeing these people who are supporting terrorists, the Iranian regime, the Houthis, the Hamas, Hezbollah, and if you're pro any of that garbage, you're anti-choice, you're anti-American in my mind, and I find it to be an extraordinarily dangerous. That's why I said at the beginning of this, Tommy, I am a nanometer away from leaving the Democratic Party at this point. I don't know that I can justify even the nanometer at this point, but I still am, and I don't have anything to announce at the moment, but that may be in the near future. I'll let you know.
Well, listen, in a couple of months, you just might be on the mega wagon. We don't know. But Ethan, I always appreciate your transparency and calling it out where you see it. It's always super appreciated. I love our conversations. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon. Who knows? A lot can change between now and then.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Always great to talk with you.
Folks, these Democrats don't seem to get it. If you're in this country illegally, you are in fact up for detention and then deportation. Let me help them out. It's time for Final Thoughts. Y'all, it's a full-time job to reply to all these willfully and permanently and deliberately misleading and ignorant Democrats. When I see them post dumb stuff, such as but not limited to this, well, I try to resist the urge to reply, but in the interest of public service, I just have to. Alex Padilla, best known for his big boy bum rush Kristi Noem tantrum, is really up in the ante with stupidity. And you know I can't just let that go. So let's tackle it, shall we, Alex? Let's start with this ICE is targeting Latino communities thing. Alex, I hate to break it to you, but the reality of the situation is that a lot of illegal aliens do live in predominantly Latino communities. But if you live in a Latino community and you're not an illegal alien, you don't have anything to worry about. If you're looking for sharks, you're probably going to go to the ocean, buddy. And to his other point that somehow ICE is overstepping by detaining and deporting illegal aliens that have yet to, that we know of, commit additional crimes here in the USA, I'd remind Alex that coming into this country illegally is indeed a crime. You don't need to commit further crimes once you've already come here illegally, though many do, to be detained and deported. When Democrats cry and whine that ICE shouldn't be detaining illegals at the Home Depot or on the farms, what they're really saying is that we should all just play Russian roulette with the illegal alien invaders and give them the benefit of the doubt until they rape and murder someone. And then, even then, some Democrats will turn the other cheek, by the way. These people were not vetted when they came to this country illegally. Why should they be given the benefit of the doubt? Someone please tell me. Seriously, why? Why should it be on us to optimistically assume that those who came here illegally and unfettered and unvetted are just good people looking for a better life? No. The benefit of the doubt is given to family, friends, and milk that's a couple days old, not illegal alien invaders. You earn the benefit of the doubt. You're not handed it when you already disrespected our country at least once when you came into it the wrong way. To Alex and Gavin and Karen Bass and the rest of them, you can cry all you want, but your voters being deported or your cheap labor being detained, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in again live tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.